Welcome to The Real with Joseph Labman. I am Joseph Labman. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Real, taking time out of your day to come watch this episode. I really appreciate that. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe for me. I'd really appreciate that as well. That's the best way you can support this channel and help me grow my content and grow this channel to where I'd like it to be. Everybody hit the like button for me on the way in on this video today. That also helps promote this video more in the algorithms, helps grow this channel more as well. Please share this content. I would really appreciate that. My guests would as well. If you would please share this episode with someone you know that maybe is interested in the topic we're talking about today. Please leave a comment below as well. We'd love to hear your guys' feedback. You can interact with myself and the guest on the panel and the live chat as well. Whatever we're talking about, just leave a comment there in the live chat. Pop in and say hello. We'll put it on the screen for you. And yeah, without further ado, let's get to the show. Welcome back to The Real with Joseph Lappin. I am Joseph Lappin. Emergency episode of The Real today. Was not planning on doing this, but we got some breaking news out of Cleveland, so I'm gonna get into it. Yeah, like I said at the beginning, please subscribe if you haven't already and like this video. Go check out yesterday's video as well on emotional healing for anxiety and panic and depression. So please go check that out. My man Aaron Cartwright was featured in the video. Go check him out as well. Please check out yesterday's video. Please subscribe to this channel and hit the like button and comment on today's episode as well. Best way you can support this channel. And so, yeah, let's get into it. So the Cleveland Cavaliers have fired head coach JB Bickerstaff this morning. Not a surprise to me. I said last week after the Athletic article came out when they lost to the Celtics that night in Game 5 that sounds like JB was on his way out of town. And I remember I told you guys to probably give it a week or two. And here we are a week later, a little over a week. And he's fired. So, and not surprised it happened today because the last 2 days the Cavs were out west in LA doing some scouting, and I'm gonna get into that here in a little bit, how that's interesting. But let's get into it. So JB Bickerstaff fired as the head coach. I think JB to me did a great job overall. You know, I think his 5 years here, he was 170 wins to 159 losses. The last 2 years, they made 2 playoff appearances. You know, I think JB did exactly what you wanted out of the 5 years. From where they started in the rebuild to where they are now, I think JB overall did a pretty good job. He laid down the foundation of who they are as a team, especially on the defensive end of the floor. And I think you saw them night in and night out for the most part show up and perform and play at a pretty good level defensively. Um, I think he did a nice job overall as a head coach. I think when I look back at JB's time, what I'll remember is in 2022, Evan Mobley's first year, just before they traded for Mitchell. You know, Evan Mobley's rookie year, Darius Garland, Jared Allen. Those were like the key 3 guys. The All-Star game was in Cleveland that year, and I remember they got really hot. I remember Kevin Love and Ricky Rubio were leading the bench. And they got really hot at one point in the middle of the season. And there was that one game they went off, I think it was on Sacramento, and they just exploded in the quarter for like a ton of points. They were just red hot. And so I think I always remember that as JB as the head coach. And I like JB a lot. I think he's actually a really good coach. I think I like how aggressive he was on referees a lot of times and just wasn't afraid to express how he felt. I think JB really resembled a lot of Cleveland. But I understand the move and I agree with the move. And I think when you look at the team the last 2 years, you know, against the Knicks in the playoffs, and that JB got really severely outcoached in that series. And then this year, you know, beating the Magic and taking 7 games to beat them, and then going up against Boston, you just see how they're not where they need to be. You have to be a legit contender in the Eastern Conference. You know, I think it's like the Cavs said in their statement today. Basically, is I'm paraphrasing a little bit. We need a guy that can get us over the hump in the playoffs so we can compete for championships again. Because we have Donovan Mitchell. It doesn't sound like Donovan Mitchell's going anywhere, and you know, so and that's interesting too because Brian Windhorst today said that on ESPN just a little bit ago that this was quote no doubt. This was no doubt a decision that was influenced by Donovan Mitchell. Now, I'm not saying directly Donovan Mitchell, but that it was pretty well known that now coming out in the last week or two that Donovan Mitchell and JB's relationship wasn't the greatest. And that it sounds like the team quit on JB a little bit this year throughout the season. They just a lot of the players weren't really fond of his style of coaching, and especially Donovan Mitchell. And so, and I think too, you look at the talent they have on the team. JB's more a defensive minded coach. I think this is where you have to elevate as a franchise. We've seen this in the past with the Warriors when they had Mark Jackson and they brought in Steve Kerr, more offensive-minded coach. Although I do think Mark was a pretty balanced coach, but you look at back when the Bulls had Doug Collins and they brought in a more offensive-minded guy, Phil Jackson and Tex Winter, and those two, brought in the offensive triangle offense, and then they turned into a dynasty. And so I think what's interesting though to me though about all of this is what Brian Windhorst also said today as well. Is that, and where do I think all this may be going? And so I'm gonna get into it right now. And so earlier today, Brian Windhorst also said, after he said no doubt Donovan Mitchell, was an influence in this decision, that the Bickerstaff family, JB and Bernie Bickerstaff. Bernie Bickerstaff is JB's father. Bernie's been around the NBA for a long time. He used to be a head coach. I think he was a head coach of the Lakers at one point. He's been an advisor or consultant for the Cavs for a very long time. For a long time now. I don't know how many years, but a long time. And so the Bickerstaffs were very close with Kobe Altman, according to Brian Windhorst. He's very plugged in the Cavs basketball for a long, long time. And that this was a very difficult decision for Kobe Altman, it sounds like. And I point this out because also last week, according to Brian Windhorst, Cavs' Dan Gilbert to be involved in offseason amid Donovan Mitchell rumors. And so, why point this out and bring up the Bickerstaff's family's connection, how close they are to Kobe Altman that Brian Windhorst reported today on ESPN, is because Dan Gilbert had his health incident 3 years ago, I think it was 2-3 years ago, and he hasn't really been as involved as he used to be. And Dan Gilbert in the past, when he hired head coaches, would swing out of he would always try to hit a grand slam. He could try to go out of the realm of the norm, and he'd bring in guys like who was the one coach? David Blatt, the one coach. He was an overseas head coach, and they brought him in for a year. And then he hired the gentleman who was the older coach. I can't remember his name right now. He used to be the Michigan. John Beilein hired him. He's swung for the fences before. Now he didn't hit on those two. Although David Blatt, his first year, they did make the finals, but they didn't really take off and become a legit championship team in the playoff. I don't think till Ty Lue took over. I think Ty Lue got more of the guys engaged and more of the chemistry going. But he's not afraid to go outside of the box and hire a coach. And I think you've heard some of the names so far in the candidates, right? You've heard Kenny Atkinson, the former head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. He's been with the Warriors for the last couple years, an assistant. I think Kenny's actually a pretty good coach. You've also heard James Borrego, he used to be a head coach with the Charlotte Hornets in the past. I think he's been an assistant down in New Orleans this year. Those are the two main names. You also heard the guy up in Minnesota, one of their assistants. I think Mike Norrie, I think is his name. Brian Windhorst mentioned that name today. So you've heard a lot of these names that have been thrown out there. But now, do I think a Kenny Atkinson, James Borrego hire would be more of a Kobe Altman kind of hire? I do. And I think if Kobe's making the decision, then I think it's probably going to be Kenny Atkinson or James Borrego, whatever one they can get, or maybe Mike Norrie. I think that's his name. But I find this interesting, though, because they really looked long and hard over the weekend. It sounded like, for some of the reporting, that they really sat and discussed this, and this was a decision they had to make. But I think, to me, if you look at the timeline of everything, you go back a couple months ago, Dan Gilbert puts out there that he's pretty optimistic. That was his quote, that the word he used, optimistic, Donovan Mitchell will remain a Cleveland Cavalier. You go to after the game last week, that article was pretty much typed up in the middle of the game, they said on The Athletic. And JB Bickerstaff's probably out of town. And Woj reported that night. Then we hear over the weekend, that it was a tougher decision, that there were some people saying that they may even keep JB, and all this stuff. And it just makes me wonder who's really calling the shots here. If Dan Gilbert's back involved now, which Brian Windhorst says he is, and I believe that report, I'm starting to wonder, is Dan Gilbert the one that pulled the trigger here to fire? And maybe that's better. Maybe is Dan Gilbert the one that made a decision here to fire JB Bickerstaff? And what is Kobe Altman's role now? How much power does he have? Now, they say Kobe made this decision and that Kobe's going to hire the head coach. I wonder. And so I bring all this up to say this, because where do they go from here? Right? What are they looking for in a head coach? And I think you obviously want an offensive head coach, in my opinion. You want a guy that can elevate this offense. Number two for me would be, because I don't think Mitchell's going anywhere. It sounds like he's going to sign about a 4-year, right around $205 million deal. That's what it sounds like. I don't think he's going anywhere. He even told Woj last week that he's pretty happy in Cleveland and made a point to point that out and put that out there. And I think there's a relationship being built between Donovan Mitchell and Dan Gilbert. That's what it looks like to me. And just like what Brian said today, this was no doubt a Donovan Mitchell influenced decision to fire JB. But I wonder if Kobe Altman really wanted to fire JB. We're going to hear from Kobe tomorrow. And Kobe's obviously going to, he's the president of basketball operations. He's the middleman. So he's got to say basically what they said today in the statement, reiterate that. But I really wonder what's going on behind the closed doors and who's really calling the shots now. And I bring all this up because, well, number one, let me finish my point. Sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I'm a little excited today. I'm a little curious to see what's going on with all this, because I love the Cavs, and I think they got a big opportunity here to really, swing big and really become a legit contender. I'm going to get into here in a little bit. But number one would be offense. Number two for me would be who can unlock Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley as a 1-2 punch and really maximize those two as a 1-2 punch. Because we don't know what's going to happen with Garland and Allen. Some people think they might be traded. We don't know. To me, your two best players are Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell. I think Evan Mobley showed in that Celtics series without Jared Allen clogging the paint. It's the same thing you're seeing right now in Minnesota. Every time they bring in Rudy Gobert, the defensive player of the year, guy makes like all this a shitload of money, and they put him out there with Cat, they go south. When they put Cat out there, who has a little more offensive game than Rudy Gobert, putting Naz Reid, who can stretch the floor a little bit, they look a lot better in Minnesota. And that's really helped. That's been their most effective lineup this playoff. And so I think the same thing you kind of see here with the Cavs. We've tried that two big system as well, like Minnesota. And I think we've had success with it, but I think Evan Mobley, is hindered by it. And so, Jared Allen's a great player, but offensively, he's only good below the rim. That's all he brings. He can set good screens, he can run to the basket, but he's only good below the rim. Evan Mobley has the whole package, and I think he showed this year. He's really starting to tap into that more and more. And I think in that Boston series, he really showed you what he can be, and I thought he played really well. And so, how can I get a guy to unlock those two? And also, who's a guy who has championship DNA, comes from a winning culture background, maybe he was an assistant from a championship organization, and just excellence, and who can elevate them in the playoffs, right, and take them to the next level, right? And that's the kind of guy I want. And me personally, I prefer more of an ex-player nowadays. I think that's the best way you communicate with these guys, as a guy who used to be one of them. And so those would be my 4 qualifications if I were making a decision, right? And when I look at Evan Mobley, who does he remind me of? He reminds me of Chris Bosh. Chris Bosh was a great defensive player, a big, you put the 4 or the 5, could stretch the floor offensively, especially when he started hitting the corner 3. They became really deadly in Miami and really elevated them to win those 2 championships after the loss to Dallas. He had the mid-range game, pick and pop, pick and roll, had the inside post moves. Evan Mobley reminds me a lot of Chris Bosh, same kind of build, the way they run, you know what I mean? He just really reminds me. Now he's right-handed, Bosh was left-handed. But Evan reminds me a lot of Chris Bosh. Just great, elite defensive player, championship level defensive player. And you saw that with Mobley this year, that game-winning block on Banchero. Those are the type of things that win you championships down the road, guys that make plays like that defensively. But also offensively as well. I think he has a lot of those same capabilities. He's only 22. He hasn't really maximized yet because he's 22. He's also played along Jared Allen. And then also his second year in the league, he's got thrown in a superstar and Donovan Mitchell, who needs the ball in his hand to be good. So, and he also has a defensive-minded coach. And so I don't think we've seen the full capability of what Evan Mobley really will be, and why people are still very high on him, and why they think he could be a top 10 player in this league one day. And so, and I think a guy who can win 1, 2, or 3 defensive player of the year if he wants to. But that's who Mobley reminds me of, is more of a Chris Bosh. Let's look at Donovan Mitchell now. Donovan Mitchell reminds me, I've always said this, of a smaller Dwayne Wade, but a better shooter. That's who he reminds me. He's a smaller Flash, but a better shooter. Now, maybe not as good as a defender as Dwayne Wade, but he's smaller. But he's a smaller Dwayne Wade and a better shooter. He attacks the basket like Wade, finishes through contact, has the mid-range pull-up, has the and he has the three off the dribble or catch and shoot. He can do. His offensive game is unreal, but he reminds me a lot of Dwayne Wade, and that's what a lot of people always compared him to. Is you just see little flashes of Dwayne Wade, just the way he attacks the basket, the way he play, his style of play. And those are the style plays I see those two, and as a 1-2 punch, really they can model themselves after. Maybe more of the modern NBA, more 3-point shooting, obviously with Mitchell and Mobley, than 10 years ago when it was Wade and Bosh in that era. But who's a guy that can put all that together? And to me, a guy I would look after is Chris Quinn. Chris Quinn, born in New Orleans, grew up in Ohio though, Columbus guy. Went to Dublin Coffin High School, was an all-state basketball player, went to The Ohio State University. His family's heavily involved with Ohio State still. Chris also played in Miami with Dwayne Wade for 3 years. He his last season in the league in 2012, 2014, or excuse me, 2012, 2013, was a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers as a shooting guard. And then after that, he went to 1 year at Northwestern as an assistant coach, and he was hired in Miami in 2014 as an assistant coach when Bosh and Wade were still there. And so he's been in Miami as assistant coach. He's worked his way up the ranks in that great organization since 2014. I think they are, if not the best, one of the best organizations in the NBA. Just the way they play, their excellence every year, what they get out of their players, how they develop their players. And they made 2 finals with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo as their best players. That's pretty impressive to me. And they're always very consistent. I think Eric Spoelstra's done a great job, and obviously Pat Riley overseeing everything and his culture, the Heat culture, as they say. So Chris Quinn, to me, is a very intriguing name. He was heavily involved in helping develop Bam Adebayo's offensive game. He was heavily involved in developing Gabe Vincent as a player, and Gabe Vincent got paid last summer by the Lakers. He was a guy that kind of came out of nowhere and worked himself into a contract with the Lakers. They got hurt this year. We didn't really play a lot, but still. Chris Quinn has really turned himself into a really good head coach. And so I bring up Chris Quinn because of one reason. Not only because he used to play for the Cavs. He played for the Cavs 1 year. He's from Ohio. He's a potential head coaching candidate. I think he checks all the boxes of what they need offensively. Comes from a winning culture. Was in Miami when Bosh and Wade were there. He has a Mobley Mitchell kind of guys now. Or he has Mobley Mitchell now, who are kind of that Bosh and Wade, I think, kind of 1-2 punch that they remind me of. Chris Quinn, to me, makes the most sense. Chris Quinn also kind of reminds me of, anybody watches NFL football for a long time, is you remember when Sean McVay got hired by the Rams? He was the younger assistant, was a hot name, and worked his way up the ranks, and finally got a job. And I remember people were saying, like, man, this Sean McVay is going to be a great coach. And he turned out to be a hell of a coach. Won a Super Bowl, made a Super Bowl appearance, I think his first or second year. Lost in New England in a close game, but I mean, still, that's impressive. And Sean McVay has become one of the better elite coaches in the NFL. I think Chris Quinn is in that same ballpark in the NBA. I think he's a guy who has worked his way up the ranks. He's a former player, but he's also been in a winning culture. He's been around a lot of great basketball minds. And I just think I think he played the guard position as well. I just think Chris Quinn, to me, from Ohio, he makes the most sense. And I just think Chris Quinn, to me, could be that guy, that next elite coach that nobody's really talking about. Everybody's talking about J.J. Redick and all this. But I think Chris Quinn actually put his time in, unlike J.J. Redick. He actually put his dues in as a coach and understands a lot of this stuff. I think he's the most ready. And I think he has the most upside of any head coach. And I think he's also kind of a Dan Gilbert kind of hire. And Dan's more involved now. I think Chris Quinn, to me, he's a guy you kind of swing at. He's kind of a bigger swing. I think Kenny Atkinson and James Borrego are the safer hires. That's who GMs would hire because they want to secure their job as well. But to me, I think Chris Quinn is the guy who he's got the most upside, maybe a little more risky than Atkinson and Borrego, but I think makes the most sense. Chris Quinn has also been interviewed by the Los Angeles Lakers. And I found this interesting because last week of my show, what's saying all that, right? Where do they go from here? And I still believe one of the bigger pillars in their offseason is this guy right here. Mr. LeBron James. I call it LeBron's last dance. His last decision. What's he going to go out his last 2-3 years in the league as? Right? He's got a big decision this offseason. And that's him sitting courtside of the Cavs game. And I broke all that down, what I thought all that meant last week. And I've showed some of the stuff from the past, how he's always left the door open. And how history might be repeating itself again here in Cleveland with LeBron coming back for a third stint. But, all I hear, though, is, from Lakers fans and everybody, I'm going to put the hater blockers on, too. Just for these people. A lot of these LA media people, my gosh, they are... It's all about the Lakers. Nobody's ever leaving, right? I saw a report that, LeBron, from some alleged sources, was at the Cavs game because, he needed to scout Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell because they're potential, trade targets to the Lakers. Are you buying that shit? I mean, that is the biggest BS I've ever heard in my life. You trying to tell me LeBron James, number one, had to sit in Dan Gilbert's seats on a Monday night in Cleveland. He came to Cleveland to scout Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. I'm not buying it. And so I think LeBron was at that game for a different reason. A lot of people don't know why. I think he knew what he was doing. He's very calculated in what he did. I broke all that down last week. And I think LeBron and his interest in the Cavs still to come back, I think is a big decision in all of this as well. Windhorst talked about Donovan Mitchell today. I think LeBron's got a heavy influence right now as well, possibly. And not saying he said he's coming back or told them or anything, but I'm sure they have an idea. And I think it's mutual on both sides by that, what he did last week on Monday in that game 3, that there's interest there and that the door is open and it is a possibility. And obviously, if you get LeBron James, you do whatever you can to get it done. Because he instantly makes you a title contender, especially when you have Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley and some of the other assets you can use to build your team deeper and better. And so now you have a head coaching vacancy available as well. But why do I bring this up? Well, this was the day after, the Tuesday to 4th. So LeBron showed up at the Cavs game 10 days ago. That was May 13th, Monday night. The next day, May 14th on ESPN, Udonis Haslem and Brian Windhorst appear on the screen, or on TV that day. Udonis Haslem, Mr. Miami Heat. He is the Miami Heat. That guy, him and Dwayne Wade. Udonis Haslem was there with LeBron in Miami. He played Miami basically his whole career. He is the Miami Heat. Brian Windhorst obviously covers LeBron better than anybody. But here's what... let me pull this up here. Here's what Udonis Haslem had to say about the potential JJ Redick hired by the Lakers, but also pay attention to the name he brought up here as well.
But you've been in these locker rooms with LeBron James. It's not easy to kind of find that fit. What should the Lakers be looking for in their next head coach?
I mean, I'm going to go ahead and say it. If it's JJ, it's going to be a cynical locker room. You're going to see guys that are going to say, is Coach going to do a podcast after the game with LeBron? You're going to have a cynical locker room of guys that are going to side-eye everything JJ says, because they're going to wonder, is it JJ's message or LeBron's message? Right. Now, I'm not just saying this because Chris Quinn is my guy, but Chris Quinn has relationships and coaching LeBron James in Miami prior to LeBron going to LA. So I know he's a guy that LeBron respects. Now, is he a true candidate? Who knows? Because we understand how this goes. You might put names out there where you already know who you're going to pick. But I think Chris Quinn really has the opportunity to go into that situation. Some Miami Heat culture, but also sprinkled in with what they're doing now and what LeBron likes to do. You have to have a healthy medium. It can't be all Chris Quinn's way, but it can't be all LeBron's way. You got to meet in the middle. And I think Chris Quinn might have an opportunity to really go in there, have the respect of LeBron James and have the respect of the locker room. And it's not going to be cynical. It's going to be a flat, clean slate, start from scratch.
Wow. So, a lot to unpack there. Number one, on the LA side with this JJ Redick narrative and all this, I totally agree with Udonis Haslem. I don't think JJ Redick would be let me say this. I think JJ Redick could be a really good head coach in the NBA. I just don't think this is the right situation. Because of him and LeBron's relationship on the podcast now, and just kind of where the Lakers are with the Bronny thing, I just don't. It's like Udonis said there. It would be too cynical of a locker room, because guys would know what's really going on here, right? And so I found this interesting last week as well. This was LeBron. This is from Shams Charania. LeBron, quote, not involved in the Lakers head coaching search, has had no conversations with JJ Redick. LeBron has made it, quote, clear that this is the Lakers organization's decision. And that this is all the Lakers' decision. This is all their decision for the next head coach. He's not involved. And LeBron yesterday on their podcast as well, also him and JJ were kind of laughing about it, and so it makes me really wonder. Now, JJ did interview with the Lakers, and there was reported that the Lakers think JJ Redick could be the next Pat Riley or whatever. Although Pat Riley was at least an assistant before he got hired as head coach, and that was a different era, just a different time. But I agree with you, Donis. I don't think JJ Redick is going to solve the Lakers' problems. I don't think trading for Trae Young is going to help solve their problems either. They're not getting Donovan Mitchell. Hate to break that to you, Lakers fans. You're not getting him. So, nice try. But anyways, I just don't. I don't think the Lakers are going to take Bronny with the 17th pick. And I don't know if he'll last to 55, because if I'm the Cavs, I'm sitting there in the mid-20s, and you can buy second-round picks now, too. If I'm the team like the Cavs, why not try out and get him? If I can entice LeBron, if that's what LeBron wants, I want my son and I want a team. I think LeBron prefers to have his son on his team. I don't think it's a mandatory thing. I think he prefers it so he can protect him, and I don't blame him for that. I think secondly, he wants to compete for a championship. I think he wants to win one more championship. I really do. And I think thirdly, he wants to have a sense of his control. He's an older player. He's kind of always been like that, but he's almost 40 now. His last 2 years, like I said, that's why I called it LeBron's last dance, similar to Michael Jordan's last dance. I think it's time, or I think this is the last time LeBron really makes a run for a championship in the last 2 years of his career. Now, if a championship isn't what he's aiming for, then I think he's wasting an opportunity, in my opinion. As wide open as the league is right now, in the Eastern Conference especially, and the Cavs are positioned for him, I think LeBron, by going to that game Monday night last week, I think he's sending a message. And to me, I broke down what I thought that message was last week, and I broke down how LeBron has always left the door open since he went to the Lakers about coming back to the Cavs. And so, but the second part of what Udonis Haslam said there as well was Chris Quinn, who I brought up earlier. And he also said Chris Quinn has a relationship with LeBron, knows LeBron. LeBron has respect for Chris Quinn. And he thinks Chris Quinn would be the perfect head coach because Chris Quinn is a, number one, very sharp, young coach who has a lot of potential to be a great head coach in this league. And I agree with that. But also, he would be a perfect balance for LeBron, not just LeBron's way, but Chris Quinn's way as well. It'd be a perfect balance. And I think when LeBron had that balance in his career was in Miami, between him and a head coach. I think Ty Lue did that in 16 as well. I think Ty Lue wasn't afraid to go out LeBron. And to me, those are the two best. That's when LeBron, to me, was at his peak. His best LeBron was when he had a coach that listened to him, but I think would also like, hey, this is my way too. And I think Chris Quinn would do that because Chris Quinn comes from that background in Miami. He's not going to take shit from anybody. And I think LeBron respects Chris Quinn. LeBron respected Eric Spoelstra as time went on. He started to respect him more. And I think he started realizing, this guy's actually a really good coach. He respected Ty Lue, right? I don't think his time in LA, which is why I don't think we've ever seen. When I look back at LeBron's LA experiment, and as a Laker, the whole thing, I just think it's more of, it was more of a lifestyle thing. He went out there, he made Space Jam, it was movies, expanded his business, became a billionaire. His family wanted to live out there, got to go to Sierra. His kids got to play high school basketball out there at a competitive high level at Sierra Canyon, play nationally. And he did win the bubble chip, but I don't think it was more of a basketball first decision. I think it was more of a what's best for my brand and for my family at that time. And that's what Rich Paul even said on Shannon Sharp's podcast recently. How can we expand your brand? That's what they were thinking back in that decision with going to the Lakers. And because the Lakers is a global brand, it's one of the bigger franchises in all sports, and you're in the market in Los Angeles, so it made sense for that. And his goal to own a team one day as well, you need to make more money. So, which he's in the billionaire status now. He can own a team if he wants to. And so, with saying all that though, I think LeBron's at his best with that balance as a coach. I don't think he's had that in LA. He didn't have it with Darvin Ham. Clearly, he checked out on Darvin Ham. I don't think he really had it with Frank Vogel. They won the bubble chip, and he didn't have it with Luke Walton especially, and so he hasn't had that in LA. And I think they've always had just this. They never really had real stability in LA to me. I mean, they've had like a new roster every year since he's been there, and so outside of him and AD, everybody else has just been traded or let go or brought in, and they're losing the first round or getting swept by Denver, and so I think it's over in LA to me. I mean, I'm not saying it's. I don't want to commit to anything because you never know with LeBron, like Brian Windhorst said last week. But would I be surprised if we re-signed with LA? No, but I'd be kind of disappointed in it because I would say, not just as the Cavs fan, but also like I think he has an opportunity to really do something big here at the end of his career, and I just think too the Cavs can make everything, all his wishes, like I said, win a championship, getting Bronny, and having that storybook ending in his hometown. I think it makes the most sense, and they would have the coach Chris Quinn, because it sounds like the Lakers are really high on James Borrego right now, and some people think JJ Redick's the leading candidate, but I don't think that would be a smart move by them. Like what Udonis said, I think that would be a bad decision in the long run. But I do think if James Borrego's there higher, which I think, and according to LeBron, he's not involved with it, and I kind of tend to believe that actually. I think when you look at the Lakers letting go of Phil Handy, like I broke that down last week, who was LeBron's guy, they didn't retain him. I think, and the David Pingalore is a KTLA news reporter in LA, and he put out that tweet back in right before the All-Star break about how the Lakers were inquiring on trading for LeBron at that time before the All-Star break, right? And I think a lot of that to me was the Lakers trying to say, hey LeBron, you're not going to tell us what to do anymore. Now they put out the report saying we'll do whatever he wants this so far this offseason after they lost to Denver, that they're all in LeBron and they want to bring him back. But everything they've done to me by letting go of Phil Handy, and then James Borrego is your lead candidate, it sounds like right now, that doesn't fit the LeBron motto to me. And I saw this picture last week too. This is Bronny's pro day or combine in Chicago. That doesn't look like a guy to me that's really interested in the Lakers anymore. I could be wrong. Maybe that picture to me just kind of sounds like like Raymond Rob Pelinka are just kind of like we're cordial, but I don't know. What do you guys think of that, Pat? To me, a picture says 1,000 words. I've seen that LeBron face before in the past. Just saying, but I really do. I think Chris Quinn with the Cavs makes the most sense to me. Even if LeBron didn't come back, I think it makes the most sense. But I think also it entices LeBron because I think, like Udonis said there, they have a relationship. I think he fits all their needs. Everything I pointed out earlier with Mobley Mitchell. Chris Quinn to me is the slam dunk hire. I think he would be perfect here. But also this too, I think going back to LeBron part of it, I think I have one more picture, maybe not. I want to put on the screen. Going back to the LeBron part, by the way, this is LeBron at the game on the top there. That was LeBron at the Cavs game. On the bottom is LeBron in 2017 he went to the Lakers the next summer. He was at their summer league game. And the last time LeBron was at a other team's game while under contract with another team was with the Cavs at that time. He was at the Lakers game. That was the last time he did that publicly, right? Went to another team's game. And until last week when he went to the Cavs game. But just want to throw that out there. But the Cavs could also take Bronny. I think you can't justify the Lakers taking Bronny in the draft, like I said last week, because the Lakers is all about championships or bust. It's an LA media market. Yes, it is Hollywood, and I think they are kind of like that. They would, they are into that, glamour story and all that. But I just don't think they're at a position right now, especially how the last 3 years have gone for them as a franchise. 4 years rather have gone for them as a franchise since they won the chip. You have an aging star. He's 40 years old, still playing at a high level. Going to be 40 in December. I just don't think you can take Bronny at 17, obviously. But I don't know if you could take him in LA, period. And I don't know if LA is the right place. The Lakers, in that spotlight, is the right place for Bronny to go. And he's still, like he said last week, he's still kind of getting back to himself after his health incident last summer, and just I think the safest place for Bronny to be as a player and to develop is in Cleveland. And you saw yesterday, I'll put this on the screen here. So the Cavs, right, they were out in LA this week scouting. That's why they waited till today when they got back to make the announcement of firing JB. Right. So over the weekend, they all huddled up as a franchise. I think Dan Gilbert's back involved now. They went out and scouted in LA. Well, guess who was out scouted in LA? And I shared this last week. Brandon Weems, who was Brandon Weems, if you don't know. Brandon Weems is LeBron's longtime childhood friend. Since they were 5-6 years old. I showed it all last week. Brandon Weems has been with the Cavs organization since 2019. He was their director of scouting, the lead scout, for a couple years. Then he was promoted to assistant GM. So he's the assistant general manager of your team, right? You saw Kyle Korver there yesterday. He's the assistant GM of the Atlanta Hawks. Brandon Weems is the assistant GM of your team. And so yesterday, Bronny James had his pro day, the Clutch Sports Pro Day, out in the Lakers practice facility. I think where they had it every year, and had it out in LA, so everybody can assemble there. And Bronny had a really nice day, shot the ball really well. I think he's a hell of a shooter. He's showing that, and I think also he can be a really good defensive player as well. I think Bronny's got some upside. I think he needs time to develop, but I think there's potential there. I think in the right situation. I give the kid props. The way he's handled everything, considering who his name is, and the pressure, and just I agree with what Kendrick Perkins said a couple weeks back. Why are we talking about a kid who's being projected in the second round, putting all these expectations on him? I think basically is what Kendrick was saying. And I agree with Kendrick Perkins on that. I let the kid be. I get he's LeBron James' son and it's a storyline, but we don't need to embellish it. I think a lot of it's more about the Lakers and their desire to keep LeBron because LeBron generates the money and keeps eyes on them. If you take LeBron off this out of the Lakers franchise, they still got Anthony Davis, but they're not a legit contender for probably 2 years at least. I mean, maybe they can sign somebody, but we don't really know what they are and who runs the Lakers. I mean, there's a lot of questions there, in my opinion. And they've traded away a lot of their assets too. Yeah, I get it's the mainstream loves LeBron in the LA market because it generates more views for them, more clicks, more ratings. It's great for their business. But I don't know if LeBron really cares about that. He probably doesn't. And I think LeBron's going to do what's best for him and his, I call his last dance, and for his son. But yesterday at the Pro Day, Bronny's sitting there lighting it up. You could see LeBron right here. And I'm going to zoom in here. So you see LeBron sitting there with his lovely wife, Savannah. You see Anthony Davis is also sitting there on the left as well. But the gentleman sitting there in the red shoes is Brandon Weems, right there next to LeBron and Savannah. Who's there? He's been going on scouting trips. He's still heavily involved. Like I said, he's the assistant GM of the Cavs, so he's heavily involved in everything they do. He was sitting there yesterday with LeBron at the workout. And I get it. They're friends. They know each other a long time. Maybe just stop by to say hello. But man, as Bronny's sitting there lighting it up, Brandon's sitting right next to LeBron and watching Bronny just light it up. See him there chatting with AD. Yeah, AD. Yeah. He's looking good today, isn't he? And you see here Bronny really hitting I don't know how many threes hitting the rope. He looked really good yesterday, in my opinion. Showed his athleticism. His mid-range pull-up looks really good. But yeah, you see that there. So Brandon Weems, the assistant GM of the Cleveland Cavaliers, LeBron's longtime childhood friend, sitting right next to him. Now, a lot of people believe that Kobe Altman is safe in his job. By the way, that's all I got for you guys today. In my presentation, I want to show you kind of what I'm thinking, who I like, and kind of where I think all this could be going. So, but a lot of people assume that Kobe Altman's job is safe. And I guess I agree with that. Not fully, but for now, his job is he's speaking to the media tomorrow. So he probably, I would say 70-30 probably is safe. But I just wonder where the power structure is going in this organization right now. You have LeBron's one of his closest childhood friends as your assistant GM. He's sitting next to him yesterday at Bronny's Pro Day. You saw LeBron. That's LeBron with one of his best friends is right involved with the Cavs, heavily involved as assistant GM. You see him looking at Pelinka there. I don't know. You guys tell me, but doesn't look great. But anyways, and I think that LeBron shows up at the Cavs game. Number one, and going back to that too. Yeah, LeBron's going to go scout Garland and Mitchell in Cleveland and Dan Gilbert's guest seats. That makes a lot of sense. I'm not buying it, but anyway. But hey, he goes to the game and sits in Dan Gilbert's guest seats and makes an appearance, a grand appearance in Cleveland, right? They show him on the jumbo screen. The crowd's going crazy, right? LeBron salutes the crowd. And now they fired JB Bickerstaff. They have the head coaching vacancy available now. And they have 2 tradable young assets in Garland and Allen. And you can trade those guys and really build your team more. You got Donovan Mitchell probably coming back. You got a young up-and-coming star, Evan Mobley, who fits well with LeBron and his style, especially the way he's shooting the 3-ball now. But then also you can hire a guy like Chris Quinn, who's also available. And so I think, to me, if I'm the Cavs, I would go with Chris Quinn, not just because I think it could entice LeBron and could all be connected, but I just think he's also the best option as well. But I also think, too, if you got a chance to get LeBron and he likes Chris Quinn, then you probably make it happen. And so Dan Gilbert now being back and heavily involved makes me really wonder, and LeBron sat in Dan's seats. Is this really all connected here? You know what I mean? Is it beyond Donovan Mitchell even? And as Brian Windhorst said, this was a Donovan Mitchell influence in it, the firing of JB. But I wonder if it's bigger than that. I wonder if it's bigger than that. You hear what Udonis Haslem said, close friend and ex-teammate of LeBron's. It's very interesting. Very interesting to see where they go. And so that's my thoughts on all this today, just to lay it all out there, where I think they should go, where I think they could be heading. I broke down there a lot of stuff I've been keeping on with you guys, or I've been keeping on, sharing it with you guys, with the LeBron factor of it all as well. And so we'll see what happens. Who knows? Maybe LeBron stays in LA and they hire JJ Redick and draft the son. Who knows? Would it surprise me? Not really. But I just, I don't know, man. Him showing up at that game really, to me, was well, that was a big gesture to me. It meant something. And I just think you look at all the possibilities the Cavs have, and like I just laid out. And you saw his boy Weems involved in the organization, sitting there next to him yesterday as Bronny's lighting up the pro day, and I think Cleveland's the best place for Bronny. I think it's a safe place for him to come and develop as a player. Not a lot of pressure. The fans here embrace him no matter what, because he's a hometown kid, his dad, obviously. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on all this. We'll see what happens. We'll keep an eye on it. Let me know what you guys think. Who do you guys like as the next head coach? What do you guys think about the LeBron aspect of it all? What do you guys think all of this means? I really want to hear your guys' feedback as well. And so, go check out yesterday's episode as well on emotional healing and support. Please go check that out. Leave your comment below on that as well, on that video, and share that video. Very important video there, and that is the main purpose of my channel. So, that's all I got for you guys today. Love all you guys. Like, subscribe, share, and all that good stuff. And I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out of here. Go.